What does Hillary's defeat mean for the role of women in politics?
Well,
Is
I
it just one isolated case, or is it, you know,
well
bad news overall?
there's a lot of research that shows that when women run for office, it can have sort of a trickle down or ripple effect. Most of the time, that can be in the form of sort of this role model effect. So there's research that indicates when women do get elected or even run for office, that can be something that younger women or girls will look to, and it can inspire them to run as well. So it's obviously a setback that Clinton didn't win. She didn't, at this point, we don't have living proof that it's possible for a woman to be elected as president of the United States. So that's a setback in its own right. But it's definitely possible that that could also set back the emergence of other women candidates. So we know
That it can or can't?
that it might discourage
yeah.
other women from running for office. Now, of course, what's most likely that will happen is, there's certainly going to be a lot of different reactions, and I could easily see there being a mix of things of, maybe some women looking at her candidacy and almost being motivated to run because she lost. But looking at the research overall, we know that women are less likely to show an interest in running for office than men, even though it seems to be the case that when men and women run, they are just as likely to win their races. So if you can get women to run, they're not necessarily at a disadvantage, at least in terms of the probability that they'll win, but they're less likely to run in the first place. There's a big gap in ambition.
Well, isn't it the fact, right, that are we making too much of this in the sense that, yes, it's great that women run for office, but, the nature of politics is somebody wins and somebody loses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not always going to win, and not every loss is a loss for
Needs to be,
women
yeah.
in general.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that there will be, it's not to say that most women will even be looking at this from that perspective, but there has been, people have sort of investigated this question in political science and in sociology and kind of what does it mean? And so there's a researcher at American University who's looked at why is it that women are less likely to run, and what she's found is that there tends to be a lot of questions about, well, will they be treated fairly by the media? Will they be subject to more scrutiny? Will their personal lives come under attack? And it's possible that looking at Clinton's candidacy and the way she was treated, when you think about some of the attacks on her, I mean, Trump said she played the women's card. He said that, he explicitly said that she, that was the only reason she was doing as well as she did in the race. And it's certainly possible that other women could look at that and the fact that she didn't win and say, well, maybe the costs of running outweigh the benefit. So
I don't think she played the woman's card much at all.
Yeah.
I mean, she was who she is who she is.
Yeah.
But I didn't see her going around saying, "You've got to vote for me because."
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people
I'm going
have
to make history.
Yeah.
I think that definitely to run for office as a woman, you've got to be stronger than the average male politician. You definitely have to put up with a lot more BS.
Yeah.
And you just have to prepare yourself that people can not so thinly disguise sexism and get away with it.
Yeah, and we saw it.
We saw it on full
in
display.
this campaign, with full display. At the same time, the other side of the coin, I think, is I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it seems to me that we have more women today in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, on the Supreme Court. Of course, they're not elected, but
Yeah.
And probably in state legislatures or governorships than we've ever had, haven't we?
I don't know
So
about
the trend
historical.
is like in the right. First of all,
Yeah.
they're not enough as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned, because I do think they do a better job than most men. But I'm encouraged by so many who are up there in prominent positions today. Look at the Senate.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah,
a dozen women senators
And when you think
today.
about, too, like what the Democratic bench consists of right now, I mean, you think people are talking about people like Kamala Harris, who obviously hasn't really proven herself at the national level. But, I think that there's a lot of potential on the Democratic side for in the next couple of years. We could even see it might not even take too long to see another woman running for president again. And the fact that Clinton she did make history even just by winning the nomination. And I think that alone is, that's something. While she didn't prove yet that we can have a woman president, she did show that we can have a woman nominee. And I think that we'll see certainly more of that in the future.
So maybe the bottom line for this 2016 is not that Democrats nominated a woman for president, but maybe they nominated the wrong woman?
I think that there's a lot of reason to think that that's the case, that she was not a candidate that fit sort of the moment and the mood as far as, not her ties to the political establishment. Although I will say that I think it's difficult sometimes to untangle that from the fact that she was the first woman to run and get the nomination, because when you look historically at how women have gotten into politics, a lot of times it has been in connection with husbands who have served previously. So I was doing some research for this story and looking at, it was talking about somebody who had been the first woman elected in her own right to the Senate. And I was like, oh, what does that term mean in her own right? Yeah. And it means, somebody who hadn't
her
taken
husband
over.
Didn't croak and then she took his place.
Exactly. Yeah. And historically that has been how women have often been trailblazing. Yeah. So I think that, for example, Clinton, when you think about the attack.
Which is hardly trailblazing.
Well, yes, but when you think about the attack on her as an insider or a dynasty, yes, that's true. But could we have seen, when you think about it in this larger context, would you have gotten a first woman running for the nomination who wasn't somehow politically well connected, who didn't have sort of that foundation to stand on? So I just think that it doesn't mean she wasn't the wrong candidate for the moment, but it's hard to untangle that.
But it would be wrong, it seems, wouldn't you agree, to come away from this election saying it's a mistake to nominate a woman as your candidate because she will never be able to win.
Yeah, I think that would not. That's
not the lesson of 2016.
That's not the lesson, no. And I think that, yes, I don't think that's a lesson. And I think that the success of Donald Trump and the success that Sanders had during the primaries, I mean, at the very least, both had this message of, Washington isn't working. And that's... although she may have tried to make the case that she'd be a reformer, it wasn't a credible case.
It's a tough case for her to make.
Yeah.
All right, so then the $64,000 question is, why did so many women vote for Donald Trump?
Well, this is also something I've looked at, and although it's true, so Trump won...
among white women, he got...
White women, yes.
The majority, didn't he?
He did. White women. He did get the majority of white women, but what I think what needs to be remembered is that Clinton did get the majority of women overall, and even among white women. So white women are traditionally Republican-leaning or often vote Republican in presidential elections. And when you look at the splits among white women, she actually, by a narrow margin, did win white women with a college degree. And what she really lost by a large margin was white women without a college degree. But when you look at the last election, Mitt Romney actually won white women with a college degree, so she flipped that. And so when you look closer, she actually did make inroads with a group of, even among white women, sort of a constituency there that has the capacity to vote Republican. So I don't think she did as poorly with women as, you have to consider how these voting groups have voted in other elections and that kind of thing. So I don't think she did quite as bad as I think people have sort of looked at that and just kind of said, well, you kind of can't believe it.
But given his statements about women throughout this campaign, and his tweets and his comments on the bus and on and on and on, just the fact that any women voted for Donald Trump, I found to be inexplicable.
And I think
that so many did. Go figure. Right?
Yeah, I think that was more so than anything else why people did think that. And there were a lot of predictions that even white women, that would be the reason why Clinton won, and it just wasn't the case.